Good day to all of you and welcome to our first session of Agile, Thrive in a Dynamic webinar series. My name is Clement and my team and I will be facilitating this webinar session. In this session, we'll be covering on cloud migration challenges and how we can overcome them. This is the first in our series for cloud webinars. We actually have another two upcoming webinars for cloud. It's entitled Experiences from the Trenches in Private and Hybrid Clouds, Do's and Don'ts on the 5th of June, and also Secure, Govern, Optimize, and Scale Your Clouds on the 12th of June. Both are on Friday, 11 a.m. You should be able to see the links flash up in the chat box. And if you can't find it, it is on your Zoom interface or dashboard. If it is not shown, you may need to click on the three dots icon to search for more options and click on chat to bring up the window. Now then, let's move along to our webinar today, shall we? I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce to you our main speakers for this session. So our main speaker for today is Stephanie Hung, Senior Vice President, Singapore Business and Cloud, Electronics, ST Engineering. We are also honored to have Chief Technology Officer of Telos Corporation, Hugh Barrett, as our special guest speaker today. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And in our panelists later, we will have Stephanie Hung and Pradhan Abhishek. Pradhan Abhishek is the Vice President and CTO for Cloud Business, Electronics, ST Engineering. And also Hugh Barrett will also be joining us with the panelists. So before we start, if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to raise them by clicking on the Q&A button. So if you're wondering where that is, it's on your Zoom interface. There should be a Q&A button with two speech bubbles as an icon. It's located there. Just need to click on it, type in your question and submit it. There is also an option for you to upvote any of the existing questions that are currently on the Q&A section. All you need to do is just click on the like button or the thumbs up icon. So our panelists will also be assisting you with your questions, and if not, we will do our best to address them at the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this time over to Stephanie, who will be speaking first. Take it away, Stephanie.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning, everyone. This is actually a new normal for us. This is our day of life. We started the day with a lot of web video conference call with our colleagues, customer, partners. Interestingly, we use many cloud services such as Cisco WebEx, AWS Chime, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom. We started to learn how to pace ourselves while working from home. We do more online learning, Masterclass, Coursera, EDX, LinkedIn, MIT, Udacity, and many have seen millions of users signing up for courses since March. Many companies have also announced that they will encourage their staff to continue to work from home till the end of the year. Some advisors to take time off to avoid COVID-19's burnout, and some cautious mental health issues for prolonged working in isolation. We do agree that we miss the human interactions. So our team have virtual happy hours to have a moment of laughter with our colleagues, friends, and family. This is the new normal. Cloud computing emerges as the essential technologies to empower many organizations and people to do more business online, scale faster, communicate, collaborate real time, virtually, reach out to customers globally, respond quickly to changing demands. It also enables service reliability, availability, and operations resilience. Many organizations have started their cloud journey early and embrace the various cloud service. This pandemic has strengthened their business case and their decisions moving to the cloud. Some are adopting a hybrid approach due to local government regulations on security and data protection. Still, many organizations struggle to move to the clouds because they have heavily invested over the years on their on-prem infrastructure and enterprise applications. They find it challenging to modernize their ICT, digitize their processes, and transform their business. So what are the challenges organizations are facing in the cloud adoptions? Let us have a poll to sense what would be your organization's utmost concern when migrating to the cloud. We have a polling question. You can select the choices.
Here are the results.
Right. Well, actually, it is very close to the worldwide research result. Security and data privacy is actually one of the top concerns most of the participants actually rated. The other one is also the migrations and integrations approaches. So let's close this polling. So here are the top cloud challenges based on IT analytics firm Flexera's annual State of the Cloud report for 2020. Their findings are that public cloud adoption is skyrocketing and multi-cloud strategies are the mainstream. 90% of those surveyed said that they are using at least one cloud services in their organization. Of those using cloud services, 93% have a multi-cloud strategy that combines multiple public and private clouds. Rapid cloud growth also means rapid cloud spending, in which turns means organizations are struggling to accurately forecast how much to budget for the future and how to monitor the consumption dynamically. Respondents reported that their public cloud spend was over budget by an average of 23%. And so is wasted spending by an estimate of the low 3% to the high of 35%. And managing multi-cloud becomes struggle, security's troubles. Organizations cited security as top serious concern, with 81% rating it as one of the biggest challenges. Governance, the lack of resources and expertise, and compliances were also cited as common challenges to better cloud adoptions and consumption. From our cloud experience, we can tackle these challenges from design, planning, transition and transformation, operations and management through the life cycle. So what are the business needs? Agility, speed to market, cost optimization, operation resilience, business survivability and sustainability, and innovation, of which the cloud deployment model can fulfill all these business objectives. Private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, community cloud, for example, like government cloud, and multi-cloud. There are structural framework and discipline approach to determine the various benefit and trade-off. One, we look at data classification and protection. It actually influenced many organizations to adopt a more of a hybrid cloud approach. Depending on the technology stack model, that is IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, you need to fully understand and aware of the shared responsibility model. If you are a government agency or in a regulated industry, additional security standard and control you need to apply. Many leading organizations are referencing this standard to adopt security control and compliances. While many organizations are using cloud for their infrastructure services, many were hindered by the legacy application on-prem. The decision for many organizations is to evaluate how they want to transition and transform their application moving to the cloud. What are the migrations paths they could take? Is there a better way to modernize the legacy's application? Are there reference architecture, methods, and tools to help us make the decision to rehosting, refactoring, re-architecting, rebuilding, and replacing by building cloud-native application? And last, how do we deliver, operate, and monitor the hybrid cloud environment and provide the IT services. By understanding the data classification and regulation requirement, we could design and deploy the appropriate cloud model. In general, there are 5 levels of data classification: top secret, secret, confidential, restricted, and unclassified. Once you have determined the data classification, you can then decide what cloud deployment model. In Singapore, when it is classified under restricted and official, you can take advantage of the full public cloud services under the government commercial cloud framework. They have put up for the 3 cloud services provider for all the government agency to deploy the workload. When it is classified under confidential, this would be a private cloud or a private community cloud such as GovCloud. That is shared by all the agency to support a specific community. When it is classified secret and top secret, it will be a dedicated, secure, or even air-gap isolated cloud with a unique hardware security module for encryption, decryption, authentication for the use of application and database that provide extra security for the sensitive data. When planning to move to the cloud, we really need to understand the shared responsibility model and the deployment of the tech stack. In an on-prem data center, you own the entire stack. As you move to the cloud, some of this responsibility will be transferred to the cloud provider. At all times, regardless of what type of deployment, customers are always responsible for their data, endpoint, account, access management. This shared responsibility helps explain the relationship between the cloud service provider and the customer. It also notes their responsibility and roles and consideration on selecting the stack. There are standards such as NIST, PCI. All these provide consideration for the shared responsibility and explore the compliances requirement. A critical part of the cloud adoption is to ensure the organization stays secure across its data and workloads. The current hybrid multi-cloud model with a growing list of security tools as well as native control available from the cloud service provider can lead to a fragmented security solution and a decrease in threat visibility. It is now the best time to introduce our strategic partner and our guest speaker from Telos, Hugh Barrett. Hugh is actually the CTO of Telos, a 20 years veteran. He joined the company in 1999 as a vice president of product development. He is the co-founder and architect of Exactor, Telos' advanced IT governance, risk, and compliances platform. He is the architect behind 5 patent technologies that are top security solutions within the federal government and the commercial sector. As the principal evangelist and expert on Exactor's suite of products, Hugh leads solution implementations and strategies effort tailored to meet most of their customers' requirements. He is also heavily involved in setting product capability requirements, often meeting the clients and prospects to learn about their challenges and requirements. He is also a certified information system security professional, CISSP, and a certified secure software lifecycle professional. Here we are, Hugh.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
Good, very good. Thanks for joining us. We have formed strategic partnership with Telos, a well-established company that actually offer cybersecurity solution on IT risk management, governance, information security. Then they also extended the security solution to the cloud to provide the cloud-based asset, enable continuous compliances with industry and government security standards. The company serves military, intelligence, and civilians agency of the federal government, ally nation, and commercial organization around the world. Hugh, so you are actually instrumental in this particular case study. And this is a uniquely stand-up, isolated AWS region, a completely air-gapped intelligent cloud dedicated to the intelligent community to handle top secret and secret information. I can imagine the kind of a security and data protection requirement is very critical. Could you share a little bit more how you were actually able to codify the NIST framework? What is inheritance, the concept of continuous authority to operate, and the body of evidence? Hugh?
Sure, Steph. So for those who you don't know, in the federal government and our civilian agencies, all systems that are going to be deployed on a network, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, need to go through this pretty rigorous process called the RMF, and we use it to do our assessments and authorizations, right? Very rigorous. You cannot put anything on a network without first going through a compliance assessment and make sure that it meets all the controls. Stephanie spoke earlier about shared responsibility model. In doing so with some of our more secure clouds, we work with our AWS partner, and we help them to identify and secure the cloud to make sure it meets all of its controls. And in order to do that, which is, by the way, is a very rigorous process, and can take months, sometimes it can take years. In doing so, we had to build out and pretty much codify the NIST controls, and we had to use inheritance. And what inheritance is, it's a way for us to inherit controls from a platform provider, let's say Amazon or Microsoft. We had to identify those controls in their environment that can be shared across all of the different services that would come into any particular region. And in doing so, we were able to assess the platform once, and then all services, workloads, applications that are going in the platform would then inherit those controls from the platform itself. And the Exacta tool was very instrumental in doing that. Once we got that done, we have the terminology called authorization to operate, ATO. I think in Singapore, you all refer to it as commission in a system. Every system, like I said before, goes through this rigorous process, and then ultimately there is an individual who has to sign off that this system meets all of the controls and all of the security requirements before it's granted an authorization to operate or gets commissioned. So once that happens, the story doesn't stop there. We then have to make sure, like your financial portfolio, we have to make sure that that needle stays in an acceptable range. And in doing so, we then have to go back and go into a continuous monitoring or a continuous ATO process, whereas we're pulling data from the cloud, we're pulling data from on-prem, we're analyzing that data and making sure that that system or that application is still meeting the prescribed set of controls that were used to assess it in the beginning. The process, like I said, the process is pretty long, it's pretty arduous. And at the end of it, what we come up with is what we call a body of evidence, right? So in gathering all this data about your system, how it meets the controls, how you have implemented that control, we then package up that information. Going back to old school, we package it up in a document. Nowadays it's a PDF, and that document is available, and the document comes in very handy when it's time for you to go through an audit and your auditors come in. Instead of the auditors going to your IT department and all your divisions and asking for data, the data is already there, it's already been put together, and it's available for them. Now, as far as the automation of controls, we've codified the NIST controls, and the NIST controls, there's a set of controls. There is the 853, which is the standard set of controls that we assess against. But then we have another set of controls called the cybersecurity framework, which we've also codified and we've put into our tools so that you can do some initial risk assessments against your critical infrastructure sector. CSF was think of it as a dumbed down version of NIST, made simpler for those organizations, critical infrastructure, that don't have a real hardcore prescribed security plan, and this kind of helps them walk through it. And we've also codified the 800.171 control. And I just wanted to bring that one up because that control set is really used for your industrial base. So from a Singapore perspective, if the Ministry of Defense wanted to make sure that all of its subcontractors and suppliers are meeting the same rigorous standard, they would use what we would call the 800.171, which is a regulation that addresses the holding and use of sensitive data, right? So you can imagine, even in your cloud provider, you would want them to be able to attest to the fact that they are meeting all the controls, and those controls that they meet, then you can then use those controls once you're deploying to their cloud. That was a long-winded answer, but.
Very good. Thanks, Hugh. I think this is very useful for many of our customers when they are looking at to implement the securities control, compliances, and continuous monitoring, and at the same time also have the body of evidence for audit purposes. So I think that actually helped to automate quite a fair bit of the mundane work and make it more efficient for people to use their time to do the more critical work.
Exactly, and
yeah.
You know, the final outcome of this process. One thing I should really say is, you know, the tool, the controls, the process really makes you aware of your risk.
Yeah.
And that's very important. Once you're aware of your risk, then you can delegate to your IT or your other departments to then mitigate those risks, and that's what makes you secure. The process just gets you to that awareness so that you can get to that level of secureness that you want. And that's why the controls are very important. A lot of people will belittle controls, but they're very important, and it's very important that you meet these controls and you maintain them.
Yep. Thank you, Hugh. That's a good segment for us to actually look at the next poll question. What are the concerns you have on cloud security?
Here are the results.
Right. Yep. So security compliance and governance and audit, unauthorized access and compromised account, as well as a number of others, like awareness of real-time security, data loss leakages, insecure interface and API, and misconfiguration of the cloud platform. And we will also like to hear from you for those people who mentioned others. Let's close the poll. So while many organizations are leveraging cloud services for their infrastructure services, how about application? Many early cloud projects gravitate towards a net new development using cloud native capability. But in a large legacy migration scenario, where the organization is looking to scale its migration quickly to meet a business case, we find that majority of the applications are rehosts. Otherwise known as lift and shift. Many organizations found that applications are easier to optimize or re-architect once they are already running in the cloud. Partly because your organization will have developed better skills to do so, and partly because the hard part, migrating the application data and traffic, had already been done. Second, replatforming and re-architecting. Here, you might make a few cloud optimization in order to achieve some tangible benefit, but you are not otherwise changing the core architecture of the application. You may be looking to reduce the amount of time you spend managing the database instance, for example, migrating it to a database as a service platform, or moving from WebLogic to Apache Tomcat, an open source equivalent. This could save millions in licensing costs on top of a savings and agility it gained. And some radical to look into more of moving to a new product we call repurchasing or replacing. This is actually most commonly seen as a move to a SaaS, software as a service platform model. For example, moving a CRM to Salesforce.com and HR system to Workday, and so on. Fourth, the refactoring. Reimaging how the application is architected and developed, typically using cloud-native feature. This is typically driven by a strong business need to add features, scale, and performance that will otherwise be difficult to achieve in the application's existing environment. You often heard people looking into containerization and microservices. And some choose to retain. Usually this means we will revisit or do nothing for now. You may want to preserve your earliest investment, writing out the depreciation. You are not ready to prioritize an application that was recently upgraded, or are otherwise not inclined to migrate some of the application. It depends on the business demand for new capability and the time to market. The last strategy is retire, get rid of it. We have worked with our ISV partner to use their tools method to provide application assessment and scanning of your existing application. And we provide discovery services to advise which application can be modernized to containers and microservices. We hope to make this application modernization more structured through the discovery of the interdependency, interfaces, application processes, data flow, and the network design. So in our part 3 of our webinar, we will share with you on the migrate, optimize, govern, scale, and secure. Whether you are new to the cloud, in the cloud, and have experience in the public cloud, there are different challenges in this life cycle. We tackle each of the challenges with our development, our professional services and managed services offering with our partner value-added solutions to help you do the migrations assessment, planning, DR backup, risk scoring, and cost estimate and projections, policies and identity governance, security and compliances, cloud infrastructure provisioning and orchestration, and container organizations, and DevOps. And we're also looking into the operations and management requirement in the hybrid cloud. How do you govern? What are the policy, risk management, compliance, regulation support, and financial governance that you need to establish? Secure. Identity and access management, password reset, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, the risk assessment, threat protection, informations and event management, and some of the encryption and key management. How do you configure? Do the update, upgrade, patch, release management, automation and scripting, development operations and troubleshooting, the change management. And protect, data protection, backup, short-term, long-term data retention, disaster recovery planning, DR drills, automated failover and restore, business continuity. Monitor. How do you monitor your application, infrastructure, network, database, log analytics, alert, and diagnostic? How do we improve on your usage span, cost optimization, proactive resource planning, availability and service management, and how do you enable regulated DevOps and continuous integration and deployment? So as we develop our managed services to provide hybrid cloud management, we have identified key partners to be our ecosystem alliances and embedded our experience and partner solution to manage the complexity of the integration across the private cloud, whether it is Microsoft, VMware, OpenStack, KVM, or bare metal, and the public cloud. We build a stack for the ITSM and IOPS platform to manage the service management and service automation. We use tools to manage the SLA, monitoring, metering, and the financial management, resource management for provisioning and orchestrations. built on our core and strengthened by our partner in the governance, policy, and compliances, and security to secure the core. And then offer the general services to our user, cloud admin, developer, and manager for self-services, dashboard, and reporting. We have put together our Azure cloud management platform to ease the management challenges. The technology stack that we put together in operating the private cloud and highly secure cloud can manage hybrid cloud scenario and leverage the multi-cloud services for workloads portability and flexibility in scaling, especially on containers orchestration across multiple clouds and multi-regions. We have customers who also need to operate in a mobile environment, deploy and transfer tactical operations. We empower the edge computing to process data such as video, image locally, and derive better sense-making and timely action. We work with our key software and hardware OEM partner in providing multi-edge access edge platform and compliance and appliances to the field in order to avoid communications congestion, reduce the network latency, and also increase data security, resilience, and scaling out. We have the software securities and data management platform to operate the edge even in a disconnected mode. To provide a glimpse of the Azure cloud management platform, we have the cloud management platform that look into all the integrations, API management and messagings, event management, resource management, service management, financial governance, and security. With the control plane, you have a single control plane to actually orchestrate workload across cloud and edge, federated monitoring, metering, centralized log collection, provisioning and shifting workload, device management, IoT data management, service management, and software deployment. We have the data platform to look into the data ingression, store, streaming, processing, mediations, and data delivery. We're also looking into the data accelerator, how you actually provide data delivery acceleration across multiple paths and ensure the quality of services and class of services. The network fabric to leveraging on the L3 overlay software-defined network, deploy, manage, and monitor the SDN, enable inter-regions communication via the SDN. The cloud edge, providing the containerized application abstraction, management, system maintenance, patching, upgrade, and manage all the nodes, whether it's control, compute, storage node, and also the network functions. So in conclusions, our core capability in design, build, manage, secure, private, and hybrid cloud. We help customer to do the professional services from application migration to modernizations, building DevOps to enable cloud-native software development, to modernize the data platform, and also provide managed services to stand up private, public infrastructures and hybrid management capability, the service orchestrations, automation, cloud security, monitoring, and maintenance across multiple clouds. So we can actually help customer to do assessment, discovery, application scanning for assessment on the application, risk scoring, cost calculator, security control and requirement, and hybrid cloud use cases. So the last poll is our call to action. We would like to hear from you. Which are the areas that we can have a further discussion with you?
Here are the results.
Right. Thank you. And we do like to follow up with you on the various call to actions. So with that, I will close my presentation and let's go to the Q&A session.
All right, thank you, Stephanie and Hugh, for your sharing. As what Stephanie has shared, it's time for Q&A. So I'd like to invite the panelists for Q&A back again, Stephanie Hang and Prada Abhishek from ST Engineering, and Hugh Barrett from TELUS Corporation to address the questions in the Q&A. So Stephanie will be moderating this session, and you may actually kick off the session with the first question. The most popular one with 6 thumbs up is with regards to cloud security, how can we ensure that data stored in cloud is secure? Take it away, Stephanie.
All right, good. So the first questions are if the participant can actually open up the Q&A box regards on the cloud security. How can we ensure that data stored in the cloud is secure? So our panelists, Abhishek and Hugh, would you like to chime in?
Well,
sure. I'll let you go first.
Okay, so data security, first of all, let me say, securing your data in the cloud, at a minimum, you should do it the way you secure your data on-prem, right? First of all, encryption. And I'll say the word again, encryption. Also, you need to make sure, in the cloud is very tricky. How you configure your storage, because keep in mind, everything is virtual. Although you're in the cloud and you're in your own private VPC, you're still in the cloud. You got to make sure everything is configured and to a point where your data is very well protected. Most of the data breaches in the cloud come from misconfiguration. And I'm quite sure everyone knows that. So once you configure things properly, you encrypt your data at rest, your data will be pretty much secure. And if you worry about the cloud, the cloud provider getting at your data, that should be less of a concern, because everyone's data is stored intermingled. And the more people you have storing your data in the cloud and on these cloud devices, the harder it is to pinpoint what piece of data belongs to what customer and how to put it all together. So encryption configuration is the key. Abhishek, you want to add?
Sure, thanks you. So just for the background of some of the attendees, I used to run Microsoft's hyperscale compliance program back in the day when I was with Microsoft, and then I set up one of their engineering teams for regulated industries. And I'll attest to what you have said, that from a CSP perspective, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible. Like, if there's a bad actor who really wants to get at your data, and if they are inside the cloud service provider, let's say with extreme malicious intent, even then for them, it's really difficult to go and get any piece of your data out. One, because access control is extremely fine-grained. Think of identity being used as your perimeter, right? That's one. And like you said, which I'll probably doubly attest to, is there's really no silver bullet to ensuring that your data is encrypted by what you do today on premise. You can scale out that same methodology on the cloud itself. You manage your own keys, you rotate your secrets regularly as part of your SOP, and what we call typically today as ConMon, or continuous monitoring. You really need to do that on an ongoing basis, right? So think of stuff like, if I were to look at industry standard tools such as maybe RSA Archer, for example, which is predominantly deployed across all the spectrum of services. Archer is more of an after the fact. Think of it as a tool used for doing a post-mortem analysis of what happened. But if I were to look at Telos, which is used by both Microsoft and AWS today for the government or regulated industry customers, you need to have that level of visibility into doing a continuous monitoring, where you go into a portal, you look at your systems of record, and you click on them and say, okay, I want to run a real-time audit for this, or I want to run and see, is my data secure? A lot of the cases where you have had breaches reported in the past, including Equifax or most of the other places, right? You hear people say that, oh, look, data was breached on the cloud provider, but nobody talks about that, why the breach happened. It happened because of bad information security practices. So as long as you ensure that there's no butterfly effect, where a small configuration change on one side leads to a data leakage on the other side due to ingrained or interconnected policy, we should be good to go with the data security.
All right. Thank you. So the next questions coming in is edge computing should work alongside cloud computing. What are your view on this? Abhishek?
Sure. So if I were to look at edge computing, I would say think of it as a hub and spoke model, right? So edge is really where you want to be in environments where you cannot guarantee physical security or physical safety of your data or of your assets. And if I look at it from a risk profile scoring, as at the organization level, you should be willing to make that management call that, yes, this is a risk as a business decision that we're willing to live with, that if we lose those assets, we don't compromise integrity of our data, which goes back to our first question, that so long as you ensure your data is properly encrypted, either in transit or at rest, and you don't put too much PII or PHI data on the edge device for processing, it's a good extension of your cloud or private cloud, hybrid or public cloud model, where you can do edge processing really at places where you have a very skinny WAN link, or you may not even have, it might even be an air-gapped instance. It might be somewhere out in the remote desert where you're monitoring for environmental conditions, for example. So I think there's a good coexistence model over here. What you need to do is you need to figure out what is the level of risk that you as an organization are willing to take up, and what is your level of calculated risk. You?
Yeah, to add to that, I totally agree with everything you said. I would check to add to that, what you have to be careful of and be cognizant of is, like Abhishek said, the data that's going to reside on those edge devices. Edge computing is great, right? Because it's almost like distributed computing. And if you remember the later part of the mainframe days, there were smart terminals connected to a mainframe. We didn't really worry too much about what was going on with your data, because the data never resided at the endpoint or at the edge. It was always processed, encrypted, and retransmitted back. So if you're going to have a solution that's going to have edge computing and cloud computing coexisting, again, as an organization, you need to understand the risks. You need to make sure that you have the right security controls in place, and you just need to monitor those security controls to make sure that those edge devices are within the tolerance that you're willing to accept from a risk perspective. Other than that, I think it's a great way to offload and to push the processing of the data down to the edge, so that the data can be processed and aggregated and looked at and viewed and massaged properly and very quickly. But everything comes with a risk. It's all about what you're willing to tolerate and what you're willing to lose, and how much of an impact you're willing to accept.
Yeah. For me, I would think that there are other use cases that maybe it's the other way around. Maybe I'm collecting a lot of the local data, for example, like video, and I would like to process the video locally, and before I actually pump it into the network to congest the whole network environment. And so that is another cases where you can potentially leveraging on a edge processing capability to process some of the data instead of sending a huge chunk of pipe actually back to your cloud computing. So that is another scenario that I'm looking at for catch computing that actually can coexist with the cloud computing. So next questions, what are the most fully featured cloud microservices platform that offer a combination of containers management, and asynchronous inter-microservices communications?
Interesting question. I think today, the industry is still evolving, right? So I would not say it would be 100% correct answer to say which one is better or not. But if you're looking at a more holistic platform which is open and usable today, is probably Istio. And if I look at it from an integration perspective, it gives you a lot of features in terms of manageability, application deployment, service deployment within to Kubernetes. And as the market ecosystem evolves, I think Istio would still be the de facto standard, but you can build your own tool set on top, or you could use integration tooling to do different things, like say monitoring is one, deployment is another, security assessments is another. So you could go with a lot of integration pieces.
Right. All right, so there are actually quite a lot of questions. Actually, there's one is I would like Hugh, perhaps since you are here, can you walk us through a use case on end-to-end processes to get the body of evidence?
Sure. I'll try and compress this 1-year task into 2 minutes. So from an assessment perspective, if you look at NIST, and I'll just use that as a example, they have 6 steps: categorize, select, implement, assess, monitor. So if you look at step 1, categorize your system, and we always explain to our customers that they have to do this. You need to collect all the data about the systems or applications that you are going to be taking through this process. And we collect this data, and it's primarily security data about the system. We collect this data so that we have a good understanding of the architecture of your system. Once you do that, you then determine what the security controls are that needs to be levied against that particular system. And once you have those security controls in place, you then implement those security controls, or you need to document how you have implemented it if the system is already deployed. If it's in development, you want to document how you're planning on implementing it. After that, it goes through a validation process where we go out and we test the system to make sure that each component of the system is adhering to the controls as per the implementation from the developer. After that testing is done, anything that fails to meet that control, we then have to do a risk assessment. And the risk assessment can be very tricky. The person that does the risk assessment really need to understand the organization's risk appetite. They also need to understand the mission or the business that the application is going to serve. And they also have to have a good technological background to understand what the different risks are. Once that risk assessment is done, the next thing we do is anything that should be mitigated, we open up a remediation and we ask the developer or the system owner to please go and mitigate that risk. If it can't be mitigated, then we have to determine whether we want to accept the risk or we want to not deploy the system. Accepting the risk is done a lot, and there's a lot of times where accepting the risk is the best choice. And I'll give you an example afterwards. Once the risk is done and the remediation has all been fixed, then we will grant the system an ATO, or authorization to operate, or commission in your terms. When it comes to risk acceptance, and this is a very subjective topic. There's nothing quantitative about how we analyze these risks. But a good example is, if ATM machines, as you know, are hacked and money is withdrawn from ATM machines on a daily basis, sometimes it costs millions to fix these ATMs or to mitigate the risk in the ATMs. A lot of banks will rather accept that risk because the money that's lost is not as great as the cost to mitigate that risk. And that's a risk that a business will take that risk. Another example is encryption. A lot of people will complain that a system has a lightweight encryption key, right? A lightweight encryption key may take an adversary 4 days to crack. If your mission is a 1-day mission, that key strength, which is a risk from a corporate perspective, is not a risk to your business or your mission, because by the time they hack it, your mission would be completed. So those are the kind of thought processes that go into assessing risks before we put the failure over to remediation. And after that, like I said, we ATO the system gets deployed, and then we monitor the critical controls. And monitoring of critical controls is critical. And it's really up to an organization and a business unit to determine which controls are critical and how often they want to monitor those critical controls. If you don't really know what's a good set of critical controls, look at the SANS list of critical controls and implement those. And that's kind of the short version of what we go through. The fastest we have gone through this process is about 90 days. The longest is about 2.5, 3 years. I can tell you if you have a tool, and I'm going to say you should use Exacta, but if you have a tool, you can get through this process a lot quicker. And if you try to do it without a tool, you're almost committing suicide. It's really arduous and it's time consuming, and it's very repetitive. So once you have this data in a tool, doing this assessment and continuous monitoring and reassessment becomes very easy the next time around.
All right. Thanks, Hugh. We still have quite a fair bit of a question, but we know that time is almost up for us. So what we plan to do is, as for some of the Q&A that we have not able to answer live, we will probably prepare the written responses, and then we will actually publish it on our LG blog. So Clement, I think we can wrap up and this first webinar on the cloud series. And thank you very much for everyone to join in for these sessions. And we hope to see you in our next 2 sessions. So Clement?
Thanks, Stephanie, Abhishek, and Hugh for the Q&A. So just want to do a quick recap on the 5 key takeaways for this webinar. So we learned that cloud computing is an essential technology so that we can do more business online and scale faster, communicate and collaborate real-time virtually, reach out to customers globally, and respond quickly to the changing demands. We have also highlighted the various challenges towards cloud adoption, where security is a top concern for all of us. Organizations are struggling to accurately forecast how much to budget for the future and reduce waste spending. There's also challenges in the governance and compliance, as well as the lack of resources and the expertise, and these things hinder the cloud adoption. So from the shared responsibility model, we can also understand on the third point and how it helps explain the relationship between cloud service providers and customers and the roles and responsibilities based on selecting a technology stack. For point, we also learned the 6 R's of application modernization and migration paths and how these can be structured well. So we can do it by understanding and discovering interdependencies and interfaces, application processes, and data flow, as well as network segments. And lastly, you've also caught a glimpse of what the Agile Cloud has to offer. It offers a unique multi-cloud management platform to manage from public, private, and to extend it to each cloud, and even in disconnected mode. So in the next 2 episodes, we will be exploring more on experience from the trenches in private and hybrid clouds, do's and don'ts, as well as to secure, govern, optimize, and scale your clouds, held on the 5th of June and 12th of June respectively. So it will be on the same day and time, Friday, 11 a.m. Do mark them down in your calendars by registering them through the QR code available now on the screen or through the chat box, and we have placed registration links there as well. You may also share the links with anyone you know who might be interested in the next few webinars. And if there are any questions, do feel free to reach out to us at mktg.infosoft@stngg.com. That is mktg.infosoft@stngg.com. Thank you all for taking time to attend our first episode of the Cloud Webinar Series, and I hope to see you soon in the next session. Good day to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.